right, welcome back, everybody. Noah Whipple joins the show today. One heck of an athletic career. We've been saying that about a lot of people lately, but it's really true. Excellent point guard for Kearsarge. Got the opportunity to play with his brother. Also played in different sports. He was involved with soccer for a little bit. Played lacrosse. So welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Yeah.
So let's go through your freshman year and just kind of talk about how you've grown from your early interest in sports and playing high school sports that year.
Yeah. So I guess ever since I was younger, just shooting around in the yard with my dad, and obviously Eli, my younger brother. That kind of just stemmed into AAU basketball. Club lacrosse with Hopkinton. I did a lot of sports.
Yeah.
A lot of youth sports with Hopkinton, which set me up. They got a great program here. I think the outing club for the Kearsarge districts has got a good thing going, and it'll turn into something great in a few years. Let's start with my freshman year. I did JV soccer in the fall. I'm not great with my feet, so it was a little tough there. But I had fun. I did it with a bunch of my buddies, and it was a good kind of first step into high school before any of the academic stuff. And then the winter season, obviously basketball, it's where it kind of really kicked off. I was a swing, so I was JV and varsity.
Right.
And I think I did a lot of AAU with the senior group, so the varsity group there, ever since I was in like 7th grade. So I knew most of them, and I played at that kind of level before, so that definitely helped me, going into the season. I think if I had to pick a favorite game, probably be the Newfound game at Newfound. So I was a swing, so I do both. I do the JV game, and then I go right into the varsity game usually. I think I remember stepping off the bus and telling our coach Spencer, the JV coach, I was like, I'm going for 20-20-20 tonight, which is just ridiculous. But I did my best. I don't think I got anywhere close to it. But we held them scoreless in the second half, which is pretty neat. And then going into that varsity game, we were struggling against a pretty good Newfound team at the time. And then I got to get subbed in. I think I had 14 points. But just being able to be that spark plug off the bench was pretty sweet. And then being able to play with those guys, like I said, I played with them since I was in 7th grade. So being able to have an official varsity season with those guys, I still talk to most of them to this day, and playing against some really good competition. Again, I remember playing against Hopkinton. I got subbed in, and I'm doing this when I get on the court. It's like 6'5" plus across the board. It was ridiculous. I think the only kid that was my height was Will Tanavasa. So just kind of an eye opener. Some of those games when you play Guilford and you play Hopkinton and these really good teams. It's kind of seeing what the level is. And then that spring season, I got to do lacrosse varsity, which was nice. I started on defense, and we had a decent season. I think we lost in the prelims to Guilford, which was a tough game. I think we lost 3-2. We were down one of our better offensive guys, and then I think my favorite game that season though was our home game against Guilford. I don't know. I just remember that game. That was kind of the game where I flipped the switch in lacrosse, and it's kind of like, all right, I'm just I play the sport to hit people. I wanted to do football when I was younger, and then my mom was like, no, you're not getting hurt before basketball. That's an injury waiting to happen. So she let me do lacrosse. I was just kind of my way of hitting people just with a 6-foot metal pole in your hand. So so I flipped the switch, started hitting people. It's pretty fun. I was kind of smaller my freshman year, so I didn't do much, but it felt good to get some contact. And then we lost in the prelims to Guilford, unfortunately, but maybe it was kind of for the best. I got to I got invited to go to prom that year. So
Cool.
if we won, the game would have been at like 7 p.m. the night of prom. So I would have missed it. So maybe it's good we lost. Obviously, I didn't want to lose, but it happens, and maybe it was for the best. And then had a good summer that year. Going into my sophomore year, unfortunately, I had the knee injury. I tore my ACL, strained the MCL, and tore meniscus. So that was a pretty big eye opener for me, and just teaching me like the mental like lessons of having something like that happen. I always see it for like professional athletes, and they're always they're coming back in a year, and you don't see all the work that they put in behind the scenes. But I mean, it was brutal ever since the surgery. Kind of before I met with the doctor, kind of talking with parents, be like, I really hope it's not it's an MCL and it's just 2 months, or it's a bone bruising, or a strain somewhere. Strain somewhere. But unfortunately, it was the full thing, the worst one you can get. Unfortunately. Right. But yeah, went through that process. It was tough. Laying. I'm kind of guy who goes 110% all the time. I'm always moving, always doing something. So kind of that, the flip of the switch where it goes from 100% down to laying in a bed with ice around your knee, elevating it. It's a big change for sure. But having the community around me that supported me, and my friends and my family, I couldn't ask for better support from them. And then being able to be around them. Obviously, I didn't do anything in the fall because of the knee. I was lucky enough. The coaching staff asked if I could kind of be like a player coach and help out with the basketball team, which was a pretty neat experience. Being able to give some of my wisdom to the guys. They struggled that year. I think we went 4-14.
Yeah, that was like the one down year, and part of it was you were out.
Right.
I think there would have been a lot different record if you had been able to be healthy and play.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was tough. It was tough to watch, but also I kind of knew that there was glimpses here and there of like, all right, we got something big here. We can do something with this. I think like I say, they only won 14 or 4. But there was these little glimpses in some of these losses and some of these wins where you were like, okay, like we can do it. It's just we just got to put it all together. But like I said, being able to have that support from them, going to physical therapy right after school and then right back to practice, basically not getting home until like 8. But I loved. Yeah, I would do it again. Obviously, the knee injury sucked, but I would do it again just because they made it so great. Wanted to come to practice every day. So that those guys were great. And then the spring, I was fortunate enough to I got my doctor. He didn't clear me for lacrosse because of the contact and cutting on the grass, but he did clear me for track, which all my life I've kind of been like running in circles, like whoopsie-doo, whatever. But that new experience, that whole sophomore year was just full of new experiences for me, and I'm better for it. Track was a sport that I got to do with Stanchfield brothers, who are still some of my best friends to this day, and it was really special because I've never done it before, and I got to run in a circle for fun, and I enjoyed it so much. Ended up asking to do it again my senior year, but it was definitely a new dynamic. I'm used to a lot of trash talk in sports from basketball and lacrosse, and then you get to the track line, and I think it was my first race, and I'm ready to go, and there's people right here in different lanes, and I'm waiting for them to just start, giving you some lip, and then, they're like, hey, good luck, man. What do you run? Good luck, and I'm for the first time I was kind of like, oh, that's not normal, but no, track is a great sport. It's a new sport to me, but everyone that does track is really nice, and obviously a lot of them are pretty fast. You can jump really high, throw really far, I was just kind of the average. I was the average guy, but I enjoyed it just because of the team and the community that I got to be a part of. That was great. And then going into my junior year, it's kind of the year that I got to be back. It was kind of weird. In June, I was doing AAU, and I had to do, limited minutes. So that was a little new to me. Getting in the game halfway through the first quarter, or starting the first quarter and only playing half of it. I wasn't sure what to think of it, but it was, it made a good, first step to getting back to playing.
Right.
Taking it easy. I think I did those limited minutes all through summer, and then I got to the fall. I decided to do AAU basketball with New England Storm, which was a great experience. I got to meet a lot of new guys that I've never met before. Obviously they're top guys, really good at basketball. I met a couple coaches that I still look up to this day. Mention them. And then unfortunately I was in an AAU game. Those are you got four games in 2 days.
Yeah, those are tough.
Yeah, so with the need just being a little fragile at that time, unfortunately the 4 games, in a span of 16 hours was not a great idea. Unfortunately, I had a little ACL strain, so that kind of kept me out for the rest of that fall season. Then getting back into the winter, I didn't do tryouts, so I guess going back to my freshman year basketball, I didn't do tryouts because I had COVID, and then sophomore I had my knee, and then junior I did a little strain in my knee, so I didn't do tryouts. So the only year I'd ever did tryouts for basketball was my senior year, which was you wouldn't expect,
right?
But so that's a little interesting story. But going back into the winter with my knee, and knowing that we had a lot of guys returning, and we had a pretty good shot of what we thought was doing really well. I think a lot of the rest of the league and all the scouts and whatever, we don't have analysts or anything, but they were kind of doubting us and saying, they'll be okay. They had a 4-14 season, rightfully so. We went 4-14, but coming back and doing limited minutes. I think I told Coach Camp, I was like, hey, I'm gonna do the second half of quarters. So let them start the game. I'll finish the second half, and then it was opening night at Campbell, and I mean the place for coming off a 4-14 season, the place was packed.
Right.
So that was really cool to see. We got a great community watching our games. Great student section too. So I think that was we were neck and neck with them. I remember right off the tip we let in like a layup, like not even 2 seconds into the game, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be rough.
Right.
But no, the guys fought back, and then I came in, got a pretty heartwarming welcome from the crowd, which was really nice.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And then that game ended up going pretty well for us. I think we won by 4 or so. It was pretty close though. So being able to be a part of that a little bit and watch the guys get their good first win of the season was really special. But I'd have to say my favorite game from that season was probably at Conant, the last game of the season.
They're super good.
They were undefeated at the time, and it was their senior night. And there's a kid. I'm sure he's a good kid, but he went out, and part of his senior night speech or announcement was, my favorite memory from this season is having an undefeated season. And I remember our big man at the time, Parker Goen, he's sitting right next to me, and he looks over and he goes, "What did he just say?" And I was like, "Yeah, I heard it too." So that kind of fueled us. What's interesting about that game is it really didn't really didn't matter.
Right, they had already secured the number one seed.
And
I
we'd
think they
already-
were 17-0
Yeah,
at that time.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. And we'd already, like, even if we won, we wouldn't have gone to 3. And if we lost, I think Hopkinton was 5.
Right, you
And
guys were 4 that year.
We had
You were
two.
locked in
We
the
had
4.
2 games on them, so even if we lost, we wouldn't have dropped to 5. So it really didn't matter. But we were kind of thinking, well, if they're the 1, we're the 4, and we make it to the semis, we'll be playing them. So yeah, we got a great coaching staff at Kearsarge, Coach Camp, Coach Tedeschi, Coach Doobie, Coach Needham, and Coach Coronis. And they were kind of thinking before, they spent countless hours strategizing and stuff. So they're kind of thinking, hey, this game doesn't matter, but that doesn't mean we go in there and just put up a loss on a record,
Right.
So being able to go in there, Conan played all their guys. They played hard. We played all our guys. We played hard. I think we came out with a 28-26 2-point win. So not the prettiest win, but when you play Conan, they're trying to hold you to 30.
Yeah,
And
I mean, that's the way they ran things with Sauce that year, because like Sauce always manages the game and
Yep.
sets the tempo based off of the team he has. And
Yep.
he had a defensive team, not a lot of scores that year, so he tried to beat everybody in the high 20s, which he usually did. But
Yeah.
you guys got by him.
No, we did. He's also a great coach. A lot of great coaches around the area, but we squeaked by with a 2-point win. And I just remember, you always, whenever you lose and another team celebrates like crazy, you're like, oh, they're celebrating like that because they know we're good. And I remember we celebrated like crazy because we knew they were good.
Right.
And that almost felt like a playoff game. Just the atmosphere. We didn't run a single play the whole game. I remember taking it out of bounds and yelling line 1, and Camp just shook his head and was like, "No, we're not. You just get the ball in, and we're just going to play basketball. We're not going to run any of our sets. That way, later we ended up seeing them in the semis.
Right.
So, kind of a crazy atmosphere that game. But definitely a good win. And I remember my buddy Parker going. That's what he talked about for the rest of the year. Whether we went on to lose in the first round or win the championship, he was talking about. Remember when they said that they had an undefeated season and then we beat them. So that's, he's pretty stoked about that.
Right.
And then we were lucky enough to make. I think we went 15-3 that year. So we were lucky enough to make playoffs. Matched up with a pretty good Stevens team. That we struggled against
Yeah.
all year. I think we beat them by 5 early, and then Austin Needham hit a crazy game winner another time. So that was a tough matchup. We ended up beating them by, I would say, single digits, and then we matched up with Hopkinton in the second round, which
Yeah.
is a good matchup.
That was a great rivalry
Oh, it
game.
is.
I was at the Newport Hopkinton game in the first
Yep.
round, and you guys were playing Stevens that
Yeah.
night, and the game got over. And like 5 minutes after the game, myself and a few other people went into our athletic director's office, and he had the game on of
Yep.
you guys playing Stevens.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, here's
Yeah.
where this is going.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that was a battle. That game was a good game. You killed us in that game.
Yeah, I know. It's I'm just still speechless about that game. I don't know. It was a great game. I don't even know, man. It was a good win. I just remember our both of our student sections walking into that game, going to shoot around to warm up or whatever, and there's a sea of green over here and there's a sea of blue over there,
Right.
and like I've never really played in a game like that. I was a part of that freshman team that went all the way to the championship. Unfortunately, we lost, but they had some pretty good atmospheres there. But I never really played in any of those games. It was kind of on the bench watching.
Right.
So just stepping on that court, I've always kind of been like, all right, I'm good. I'm not going to get nervous. I'm not whatever. And then I stepped on the court, and as soon as the tip off goes, you're like, whoa, like it's different. It's different in here now. But yeah, I think it was a great game. I don't know. There's a lot to be said. Like you said, it's a great rivalry. It is. I got a personal experience with a lot of those guys because I grew up playing Hopkinton soccer with them, Hopkinton lacrosse with them. So I know A-Frame, I know Braden Crawford, I know all these guys. I'm sure I'm blanking on a few, but Nolan Staples Roy. Like I know all these guys, and we just played them in lacrosse this year. So being able to play against them in that rivalry, and it's not like a dirty rivalry either.
No.
I think that's been mentioned before with, I watch you guys in like YCN and stuff like that. It's a great rivalry. We're gonna go out there. We're gonna compete. Still help each other up, but we're competing out there. And then once you get off the court, it's all love, and you're dapping each other up after the game,
Right.
saying nice job and good luck. And obviously that one's tough because it's a playoff game, so one team's going home either way, so it's a little tough after the game. But I've never, with Hopkinton, I've never had a problem after the game being able to go up to them and be like, hey man, great to play against you again,
Right.
great to see you. We'll see you next year. That was the junior year, so we'll see you next year. But it's a great friendly rivalry. Not that those two words ever go
Right.
together, but
I mean, it really is, like, just thinking about it, like, there's, like, kind of different levels to rivalries. Sometimes you have, like, your middle school or your rec league where it's just, like, friendly all the time, even during the game.
Right.
And, like, then there's, like, the opposite side, which is, like, the Pinkerton,
Yep.
Bedford, where
Yeah.
you draw in 1,000 people in a gym, but it's intense before the game, during the game, and after the game.
Right.
Those two schools do not like
Yep,
each other.
yeah.
There's no handshakes or
Right.
any of that after the game. So that's kind of what's unique about this is, like, I think it's done the right way because you have kids who grew up really knowing each other, and then during the game you have like this super intense rivalry, and it's on. It's like somebody flips a switch
Yep.
at the start of the game,
Yep.
and then it turns off at the end of the game, and we could be friendly and be friends
Right.
again. But during the game, it's war.
Right. Oh, completely. And it's weird, but like you said, it's great. So yeah, that was our basketball. Like I said, unfortunately we lost to Conant in the semis, but a great season with those guys. And still buddies with a lot of them. I think we had 3 seniors that year. We had 4. We had 4. I guess senior night we had a moment that was pretty special. Noah Dunlap. He's a senior with autism that usually played JV2. He got to get on the varsity court, get a couple buckets. Shout out to Monadnock. That's a great moment, great sportsmanship. A lot of respect between those two coaches and
Oh,
the
yeah.
two teams. That was a great moment. Kind of, I know it was on the court, but kind of outside of basketball, and just, he's grown up around the area. But yeah, that was a great moment. And then there's a couple games here and there, like I said, that were pretty special games that I'll still watch back here and there if I got nothing to do. And then spring season is my first season back playing lacrosse. We brought in, I think they struggled the season before. They went 2-12, 3-11, something like that. So they struggled too the season before. We brought in a lot of guys. One of our best attackmen, I think he scored like 40 goals that year. So he had a season. A bunch of midfields. Parker Goen, Eddie Kinzer, 2 of the basketball guys played. They both great. A lot of our defensive middies were all non-lacrosse guys.
Right.
We had one of our the schools, I would say one of, if not the best soccer player. He's jacked, so he was out there playing D-Midi. Did a great job of it. We had one of the football middle linebacker. He was out there, also jacked. He's doing a great job. We had one of the football wide receivers who's really shifty. So he'd get the ball and he'd go. But yeah, we had a lot of guys that didn't really play lacrosse as their number one sport. But being able to bring those guys together, just slowly bond. I think we started the season 1-3. So beginning of the season, we're all kind of looking at each other, going, "This might not be too great." But I think we ended up beating Co Brown on their, on their grass, on their turf, whatever you want to, 10-7. And that was probably kind of our moment where we were all like, okay, we can do some damage here. And then after that, I think we ended the season 10-4. So after that 1-3 going, I was at 9-1 for the rest of the season. A game that's really special to me in that season was the home game against Pelham. They came in undefeated, number 1 seed. They had a couple injuries, but we were able to knock them off 7-5, which was a pretty special moment. Being able to knock off number 1 was pretty cool. And then we had a couple good battles against Bo. We played them both times at our place, and we won 14-9 the first time. We played a great game. And then, unfortunately, in the quarterfinals, we lost to them in overtime, 7-6. So a tough loss there, but nonetheless, a great season with those guys. It's another one that I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Not change a thing, just to experience all the little stuff. Because really, it's easy to look at the wins and the losses and all these big moments, like these big games, as like what really builds a season. And they're definitely a part of it for sure, but just the little things like, team dinners and, having fun, goofing around after practice, that type of stuff. I think during the basketball season, my junior year, I stayed around with Coach Doobie and a couple of the Kinzer brothers, and then obviously Eli and I. And I think we talked after we had a practice like 6 to 8, and then we talked after practice until like 11 at night. I remember my phone died, so my mom was a little worried, but like that, the little stuff like that, the little workouts that you just do with 1 or 2 people. Like I said, shooting around in the yard with my dad and my brother.
That's cool.
Like those are little things that all build up the season. So I know a lot of like the fans and the community doesn't see that stuff, so they just see the wins and the losses and the big games. But it's all the little things that really make a season a season.
That's what's cool about it.
Yeah, no, it
I
is.
think like all the little things adding up. Going into your senior year, obviously, that final basketball season. If you want to talk about that, because I was fortunate enough to see you guys on the first game of the season, the last game of the
Yep.
season, because I saw you opening night at Newport
Right.
with Eli, talked to you guys, and then obviously there was the championship game against Belmont, so take your time with it, but I think that was a cool year too.
No, it was for sure. I think going into that year in the fall, I did a lot of workouts with my dad and some of the guys, and with Coach Doobie. I was ready to go. But also part of me was like, like you said, I got to enjoy this, because this is the last high school season. It's the last time playing with my brother. It's the last time playing with this senior group that I've grown up with. So just kind of being able to sit back before the season, before the first scrimmages, and go, I gotta enjoy this. This is something that some people never get to experience, playing with their brother, which I'm extremely grateful to do. And honestly, just like playing in the games that we did, some people never get to experience that. So I guess I'll start with the scrimmages. We had our first scrimmage. It was home against Dairyfield. That went pretty well for us. Obviously, like there's some stuff to fix, and as there is with every game.
Right.
And then really the big scrimmage that stood out to me was the Nashua South scrimmage. Obviously a pretty big D1 school. They got a great player in Josh Caruso and a bunch of other guys that you don't hear about in the media, but they're great players too. So being able to go, we went to Londonderry High School for the NH Sports Page tournament. Being able to go and participate in that against a really good Nashua South team was just a joy, and being able to do as well as we did against them. I think they had a couple guys out, but being able to do what we did was something special. And that's kind of, I mentioned, the lacrosse season when we kind of flipped the switch and kind of realized, and that Nashua South game was when I think, the coaching staff and we all realized, like, okay, we can really compete this year. And then, we had a Merrimack Valley scrimmage, which didn't go too great for us. But then, like you said, we went into opening night at Newport, which a lot of people complain about that gym because it's tiny and it's a little cramped. But I'm a fan. During that season, we would go and watch just random Newport games just because we like the atmosphere of the gym. I think it being so tiny, it makes everything so much louder. and just the atmosphere of kind of Newport. The whole town, the whole community comes in to watch those games. I think that's really special. But yeah, we opened up. We were blessed to have you covering us that game, which is pretty sweet.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. And then a good win. It was a little shaky in the first half. I think it was a one-score game or something.
It was, I think they were ahead by a good amount, like Aaron and company. They got up on you guys, and then, Coach Camp and you guys, like the last 5 minutes of the opening half closed it, and I think you guys were ahead at halftime by a little bit.
Yeah.
But you really took over the game in the second half.
Yeah. No, it was a good, a good first win, and kind of, we were a little going into halftime. We knew we could do well. I think we underestimated them a little bit. We on the scouting report is kind of this, there's two guys, this Christian and Aaron. Shut them down. You shut down the rest of the team. And I think a lot of, they had a couple guys getting really big rebounds for them, which was our main problem this year, is a little undersized compared to a lot of teams. But like you said, the last 5 minutes, I think we did our Cougar press, and we got a couple steals, a couple layups. And then the second half is when, like you said, we really opened it up and dominated.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Were you, or was Eli matched up against Tyson in that game? Do you remember?
I think it was Eli.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so Eli, not really known for his defense. But I mean, obviously he's my brother. I see him do it in the yard when 1v1, and I know he can play defense, when he really wants to. He's got a problem with reaching in. So he we'll always yell at him when he reaches in, because he likes to try to get a steal, and it always 99% of the time it ends up in a foul. But he's a great defender. But yeah, I think both teams had a pretty good first half, and then we opened it up in the second half. Kind of settled in, ran our sets. Like I said, that gym's pretty crazy, pretty noisy. So I think part of it was stepping in that gym and their fans going crazy, and we kind of weren't ready for the moment there in that first half. And then the second half, Coach Camp calming us down, being able to run our sets, get in the right defense, shut them down. I think we ended up winning by 20 or so. So that was a good first win. And then we went on a decent run, having some great games. And then I think we got to Campbell. And that was kind of the one where that was our first game where we were kind of like, all right, this team is going to be
they're
really good. And I think they had just beaten Belmont, which everyone kind of knew Belmont was the team to beat this year. So them beating Belmont, we were kind of like, all right, we really got to get going for this game. That gym is also the same type of atmosphere. It's dark. It's they got quick, scrappy guys, and they're gonna press you. They're gonna play you hard. I think we went into that game and they pressured a lot of our guys, and I think we just weren't ready for that. A lot of the teams that we played had kind of backed off and let us dribble and let us pass, and they were having none of that. Props to them, their coach, great coach. It was good game plan there, and I think part of it was just, like I said, we just weren't ready for the moment. Mm-hmm. But that was kind of our little awakening, where like, all right, we're not this great team that we think we are. We got a lot of things to work on. But it's a good thing we had that loss, because it kind of let us see what we wanted to do. And then we had I think we won the next couple, and then we went to Newfound, which is supposed to be a game that we would win. And all season, Coach Camp was like, Newfound, they're up and coming. They're good. They're going to be good. I think a lot of us were kind of like, yeah, okay, because in past years, like the last year, my junior year, we beat them by 20 with ease, and
right.
So we kind of weren't expecting. And then they were hitting three after three. They were hitting shots, and I think we went 2 for 19 from three. Yeah. So, and that was kind of our bread and butter. This past year was our 3-point shot and our ability to get that open. And I think when it was open and we were shooting them and it wasn't falling, that was kind of a heartbreaker for us. and then it ended up being a pretty heartbreaking loss. Near the end of the game, we were just getting throwing shots up, trying to get back, and then there was like 5 seconds left. We threw up a shot. They got the rebound. I'm blanking on his name, but he's a really good player. They outlet it to him. He runs down. There's like 2 seconds left. He jumps up, dunks it. As we're all kind of walking off the court, they storm the court. But that was kind of all right, we gotta, we actually really gotta, get it together here, because I think we had maybe 5 games until the playoffs, so 5 more games to kind of, regroup. But that was another game that we were ready for. So kind of going into practices, I was like, we gotta push each other to be better. And that kind of, being able to play with Eli, my brother, is really special. Because I got to push him every day in practice with kind of no consequences.
Right.
Some of the other guys you gotta lay off a little bit. You can't push too hard. And then, I'll always, whenever we're in live play, I'm matching up with Eli. He's matching up with me. And even the little shooting drills, I'm shooting and I'm making sure, oh yeah, you're gonna miss because I'm gonna make it. So that brotherly competition, as well as being able to go home and still, we're still brothers. We still love each other. But I just remember one practice. I think we were doing half court. It was our what we call shell drill, so like the 5v5. And I went in for a layup. Eli was guarding me, and he just hacked me. Not even, if it was a game, it probably would have been some sort of technical foul, But we've been doing that all year to each other, just guarding each other, super aggressive. That way, when you get in the game, it's not as hard. You're going in there and you're getting a little bump, and you're like, oh, that was nothing compared to what I just had in practice yesterday. But he hacked me. I went up for a layup. I got it out of the hoop, and I kind of just tossed the ball at him like that. And he kind of grabbed it, and he was like, okay, here we go. Like, this is good. And then the next play, drove, dished it. Teammate made the layup, gave him a high five. And then I'm kind of just looking at Eli, like, that layup's on you, man. I drove by you, you caused that slide to come. And that was when Coach Camp blew the whistle, and he was like, we gotta be a team here, fellas. We can't be getting on each other like this. And just, we explained to him after, like, that's how Eli and I push each other. And I think that really helped, at least Eli and I, just being able to push each other all season in practice and in the yard. You saw games like the Campbell game, the Mascoma game, where Eli's handling the ball really well against like good pressure, and that's what really, I don't know, I felt that separated him from his freshman year. Obviously he grew a little bit, he got a little bit more size on him, but he handled the ball with pressure, and obviously we all know he can make shots. But him being able to play that kind of point guard position was huge for us this year, especially when it came to games like that Guilford game.
I remember that game. I was calling that game.
Right? Yep.
You went down with an injury, I think, in the second quarter.
Yeah. So like I said, when whenever you reach, there's 99%. It's not a good thing. So I think it was Cooper Perkins. He was coming down the lane. I reached, and he's coming up over the top with the ball, and I got a little elbow to the face. Luckily it wasn't any sort of super bad concussion or anything, but you get hit in the head nowadays, and you got to go through the whole protocol. So I went through that with Eric Jelinas, our new athletic trainer. Did a great job getting me back for that semifinal Mascoma game. Was huge. But going back to that quarterfinal Guilford game, we just beat Conant by like 15 or so it was a decent win. And then we kind of knew that we just played Guilford. It was our last game of the season, I think. So we battled there. I think Eli had like 27 that game, so he had a pretty good game. And we ended up beating him by like 8 or so. But we've always struggled against Guilford. They're a great team, coached very well. But we went into that quarterfinal game. We were up early. I think it was like 22 8 or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
And then, you got hurt.
Right. And
They
then
closed the gap. And
they
then
did. Yeah, I remember.
Eli was able to hold us off.
Right. And I remember going into. I went into one of the classrooms with the lights low, and I was listening to you, announce the game, and I'm kind of sitting there, and I'm like, oh boy, let's go, fellas, let's get it done. But I remember, I think I went in there at like start of the third, and then you said the score, and I was like, oh my gosh, like we were just up. So I think it shocked the guys a little bit. Because I don't think I missed a game this season, so I think it shocked them not really having that me on the court. But they've done it before. They did it. They've done it. They did it the whole sophomore year. They did it. They've done it in some scrimmages before, so I knew they could do it. And they did. They ended up pulling out a 48-45 win.
Overtime.
Which double overtime, which is. I still mention that. Like I didn't even play in most of that game, and that's one of my favorite games of the season. Just being able to listen to those guys, go crazy, have a great game, hit some clutch free throws at the end, play some good defense. But yeah, I remember it was like a couple days later, we went home, and I watched it. I watched it back, and I remember sitting there with Eli, and I was like, how did you guys win this game? It's just being able to see the little stuff like. There's little mistakes, little turnovers, and then I think it was the start of the fourth quarter. They really came together as a team and pulled together. They were all taking turns handling the ball now. Between AJ Tremblay, Austin Needham, Eli, Liam Miller got in there for a little bit, and then our bigs, Braden Kinsler and Davin Boley did a great job. So just hearing those guys pull it together there, and then Austin Needham had a pretty big game that night, obviously, hitting some big shots. I think my favorite moment there's a picture of it. It was like 5 seconds left, and their point guard is coming across half. He does a crossover, and Eli reaches, and you get that 1% where it's like, all right, it worked out,
right.
And he pokes it out, and he gets the ball. And he just chucks it up in the air, and there's a picture of him, and the whole student section is rushing the court, and everyone's going crazy. It's probably one of my favorite pictures of like all of basketball. It's pretty special, pretty special moment for him, obviously, and for the team. So yeah, that was obviously you called it, so that was
fun.
Obviously a great fun game to be able to call and be able to play and watch. So. That's probably one of, if not my favorite game of the season, and I wasn't even playing for the second half or any of the overtimes, but just watching those guys, go out there and just do it, they knew they could do, and I knew they could do, was something really special.
It was pretty cool. So you had the Mascoma game, and then you were able to get through that and get to the championship against Belmont.
Yeah. So yeah, that semifinal of Mascoma game, we played them earlier in the season. They were missing one of their better guys, and then unfortunately one of their better players tore his ACL about halfway through the season. He's doing better now. I reached out to him during the game and stuff, so that's good. But yeah, that game was crazy. We kind of weren't sure what to think. We made it to the semis last year. I just remember Eli hit a shot to put us up like 12, I think, and they took a timeout. And he's going over the huddle, flexing, saying "let's go," and then he just says, "We're not doing what we did last year. We're not shutting down. We're not losing this game." And I think all the guys kind of heard that and were like, "All right, let's go win this thing." And I think. The first half, you can say, Eli and I scored all of our points, but there's so much more that goes into that, those points scored, like the passing, the spacing, but then again, Eli was, he hit like 3 threes in the first quarter, the first half or something like that. So when he's shooting well and teams are giving him space to shoot, you're kind of going, this game's over if you're just going to let him shoot like that. I think we played Newport at home, and he passed to me on the high post, and I handed it back off to him, and they went under me, under the screen, and he was wide open for like a foot behind the line, 3-pointer. And I just remember going back and looking at him, if they're going to give you that, this game's over, So when he's hitting those shots and they're giving him that space, we're going to be a tough team to beat. And then, obviously Mascoma, they switched up defenses there in the second quarter to a little bit of a zone, which we struggled to figure out for a little bit. But obviously they also read the scouting report because, they came out of halftime and they pressured us. So kind of like that Campbell game, a lot of pressure, led to a couple turnovers for them, but, we kind of got back on track. And I think one of the plays that I remember was an out-of-bounds play. And, Coach Camp is always huge on out-of-bounds. Make sure you can get 8 to 10 points a game off of those. And I remember we ran, I think it was line 2 or box, I think it might have been box 2. But basically the play is just a whole diversion, and then AJ Tremblay is just cutting right down the middle. And he was wide open, bounce pass, layup. I just remember that was kind of the moment where I was like, all right, we're good. It was about halfway through the third, I think, maybe in the fourth. That was kind of the moment where I was like, all right, if we can get those out of bounds, we'll be all right. And then Austin Needham, they started to cut it back. Austin, is corner guy, corner shooter. I think he hit two corner threes, 2 big ones later in the fourth. And then AJ Tremblay hit another wing 3. And then Eli put in a couple layups, and Davin had a layup. I think, it's just slowly you started to see after Austin's threes, you're kind of like, okay, this is, we're going to win. And that's kind of when it, you shifted the focus. I think we subbed out all our starters. They subbed out all their starters with like a minute left. You're locked in during the game. You're playing. You're not really thinking about, what's next. You're thinking about, let's just win this game. And that's kind of the moment where, I high-fived all the coaches and came over to the bench, and, we were all kind of like, all right, like, what's next? We had the first game at the semifinals, so we got to watch a little bit of Belmont St. Thomas, which was a great game as well. But yeah, just being able to play in that game and watch Eli do what he did was, what any older brother would want for a younger brother,
Of course.
And then that championship game, a stage where not a single one of us had played, but it was the same thing for them. I was on the bench for that freshman year team, so I've been there, but I wasn't, I never touched the court. So that was it was a pretty interesting game. You used to, Guilford being in the championship game. So having 2 new teams that have, really, we were there my freshman year, but none of the guys on the team have ever really been part of that championship, atmosphere. And I just remember before the game, everyone's kind of stressing a little bit. But we Carter and Blake, 2 of the kids on the team who they didn't get a ton of minutes, but they were like super valuable and necessary to the team just for like the the good vibe that they brought.
Right.
So I guess
players.
Yeah, exactly. Glue guys, But a story about that is we were before the championship game. Everyone's nerves are pretty high. To calm down the nerves, I don't even know if it was to calm down the nerves, or they were just doing it. They go, let's play some hide and seek, guys. This locker room would be a great place to play hide and seek. And we're all sitting there, and I'm like, all right, championship game, here we go. Whatever, and they're opening the locker doors and getting in those, and hiding under the sinks and stuff, and just stuff like that, where it's like you never, like if you weren't there, you'd never guess that, like, well, what did that Kearsarge team do before they went out and took the floor in the championship game? Yeah, they played hide and seek. They didn't listen to music to lock in. They played hide and seek. And
I think that's so cool you're sharing that story.
No, it is. It's great. Some of the coaches were like, "What are they doing?" And as a captain, one of the captains, I was like, "Just let them." Everyone's relaxed. Everyone's laughing. Whether we win or lose this game, I remember telling Coach Camp, I was like, we made it to the last. We played on the last game possible, like the last game possible. You know, we never left it one game short. You know, we're here, whether we win or lose. You know, they're not Belmont's. If you know they ended up winning, the great team. You know, they won, but they're not going to another. They're not going to play another game as a team. So that was kind of, you know, I was like, you know what, because he came up to me after the loss and he's like, sorry, man. I'm like, coach, we're good, man. You know, we played on the last game possible. There's only 2 teams that get to do that. Now, unfortunately, we lost. But going back to before the game, yeah, that, you know, playing hide and seek is something that you never, like I said, you never think that would be, you know, the move before the game, but they did it, and those guys, like I said, they're necessary to the team. They kept the team, you know, afloat, happy, together. But then, yeah, taking that court and just doing warm-ups was something that, like, you know, you'd never, you know, as a kid, you're always like, oh, I want to play in the high school varsity championship game, and, you know, just being able to step on that court is crazy.
Oh, yeah. All right, so you got done with basketball. If you briefly want to discuss your lacrosse season, and then we can talk about what you're up to next year.
Sure. Yeah. So lacrosse, I think we went 9-5. It was a good season. We didn't exactly have the offensive firepower that we did the last year. So, you know, as a defense, we had a great defensive group, a great goalie, Brody Malinowski. Just being able to hold teams to as few goals as we could, and then get the ball up to our offense and let them do their thing was kind of the main objective. We lost in the quarterfinals to what I think is the best team. It's Co-Brown. Unfortunately they lost in the championship to a good Plymouth team, but they were really good. But to get to that quarterfinal, we played Conval in the preliminaries. And that we had a great game. I think it was like 92 degrees. So for lacrosse, it's not. I mean, for any sport really.
But you got all the pads.
Exactly.
In the
Yeah, we're sweating, we're dying. We go out there for starting lineups, and the first thing ref says is like, you know, it's a great day for lacrosse. And our goalie, who's wearing, you know, he's usually goalies wear like sweatpants and a shirt under, and you know, he's got all the pads. And he kind of looks at him and he goes, you know, he kind of chuckles, and the guy's like, no, I'm just kidding. And we're all kind of like, good, because, you know, there's no way this is a great day. But yeah, we ended up, I think we were down 3-0, like 3 minutes into the first quarter. We'd never played Conval in the year, so we weren't sure what to expect. We knew they had a couple really good players, but we never scouted them, or we never played against them, so we never were able to, you know, really get down and scout them. And then we brought it back. Our offense, you know, put a couple runs of goals. I think Eli was fortunate enough to play lacrosse with him this year. He scored a hat trick right after they scored 3 goals. So he put in 3 right away, which is pretty neat. But yeah, that was a great season. Definitely a lot of memories from that season. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how that's like your last season of high school sports. You know, I remember going into JV soccer my freshman year. Like it's just crazy how it goes by so fast.
It really does. So what are you up to next year? Let everybody know.
Yeah, so next year I'm headed up to the University of New England in Biddeford, Maine. I'm going to study applied exercise science and play on the lacrosse team there. I'm going to try out for the basketball team as well.
Awesome.
So looking forward to it.
Good luck. Thanks for coming on.
Thank
Noah.
you. Thanks for having me.
Please subscribe to the channel. It helps out a bunch and is completely free. Thank you.